What happens when one of the most famous royals in the world walks onto a morning show set and completely loses control? In just 33 seconds, a single comment would turn a friendly interview into an absolute disaster that nobody saw coming. Good Morning America's studio was buzzing with the usual energy that comes with a high-profile guest. The lighting was perfect, the cameras were positioned just right, and there was an electricity in the air that only happens when someone truly famous is about to walk through those doors. Prince Harry had flown in to discuss his latest charitable project, and the producers were excited, almost giddy with anticipation. This was the kind of booking that could dominate headlines for days, the kind that would have people talking around water coolers and sharing clips on social media. Is Sam Champion, the beloved weatherman who had become one of the show's most trusted faces, was chosen to handle the interview. He was known for his warmth, his easygoing nature, his genuine smile, and his ability to make even the most nervous guests feel comfortable. If anyone could navigate this interview successfully, it was Sam. The segment began exactly as planned, like a well-oiled machine. Harry walked out to enthusiastic applause from the audience, shook Sam's hand with what looked like a genuine smile, and settled into the comfortable chair across from him. The cameras rolled smoothly. Sam started with a softball question about Harry's recent work with veterans, something the prince had been passionate about for years, something that should have been easy territory. Harry smiled and answered smoothly, dined, his voice warm as he talked about the importance of supporting those who had served, about giving back to the people who had sacrificed so much. But then Sam did what any good journalist does, what he had done thousands of times before in his career. He asked a follow-up question, something just slightly more probing, the kind of question that moves a conversation from surface-level pleasantries into something more substantial. He wanted to know about the funding for these projects, the actual mechanics of how it worked, where the money was coming from, and how Harry planned to ensure it reached the people who needed it most. It was a fair question, the kind that any charity leader should expect to answer, the kind that demonstrates real interest in the work being done. Nothing more, nothing less. There was a pause. Just a brief moment where you could see Harry processing the question. His smile flickered. Something shifted behind his eyes. And then the mask came off. Harry's expression changed immediately. The warm smile disappeared completely. His eyes went cold. He leaned forward in his chair, his posture suddenly aggressive. When he spoke, his voice had an edge that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Are you questioning my integrity? The question hung in the air like a threat. Sam blinked, clearly not expecting such a hostile response to what had been a straightforward question. He maintained his composure, his voice remaining friendly and warm. Not at all, Your Royal Highness. I'm just asking for our viewers who might want to contribute or get involved. Transparency is important when it comes to charitable organizations. Harry's hands gripped the arms of his chair. Transparency, he said slowly, as if tasting something bitter. Interesting word choice. The temperature in the studio dropped. Harry's jaw clenched. That's rich coming from a network that profits off sensationalism and gossip. You people have been hounding my family for years, and now you want to lecture me about transparency? Sam remained calm, his voice steady and measured. He leaned forward slightly, trying to connect. I understand you've had difficult experiences with the media, and I respect that. But this is a straightforward question about your charity work. Our viewers simply want to understand how they can help. That's all I'm asking. Harry's laugh was sharp and humorless. That's all you're asking, he repeated mockingly. Right. Because it's never just one question with you people, is it? It starts with funding. Then it's about where I live. Then it's about my family. Then it's about every private detail of my life. Sam shook his head gently. We're talking about your charity. Nothing else. I haven't asked you anything about your personal life. Not yet, Harry shot back. But that's coming, isn't it? That's how you people work. You butter someone up with easy questions, make them comfortable, and then go for the throat. The crew was frozen now. Nobody had expected this. Sam took a breath and tried again, his voice still kind. I promise you, there's no hidden agenda here. I genuinely want to know about your veterans program because I think it's important work. Our audience thinks it's important work. Help me help you share that message. Harry wasn't having it. He sat back in his chair and crossed his arms defensively. The body language alone told the whole story. Your viewers, he said mockingly, practically sneering at the words. Let me tell you something about your viewers, Sam. They don't care about veterans. They don't care about charity. They don't care about any of the things that actually matter. They care about drama. They care about scandal. They care about watching people squirm under pressure. That's why they watch this show every morning. That's why they tune in. For the circus. You could feel the shock ripple through the studio like a physical wave. Crew members exchanged glances of disbelief. The camera operators looked at each other, unsure if they should keep filming. The producers in the control room froze, their hands hovering over buttons they didn't know whether to press. Someone in the back whispered something urgent into a headset. Sam Champion, to his extraordinary credit, didn't flinch. He didn't get defensive. He didn't take the bait. He kept his voice kind and professional, the same voice he used every single morning to talk about the weather and make people smile. I think you might be surprised, he said gently, his tone almost fatherly in its patience. Our viewers are incredibly generous people who care deeply about important causes. I've seen them rally around fundraisers for disaster relief, for medical research, for helping families in need. That's exactly why I'm asking these questions. They deserve to know where their potential donations would go. They want to help, but they need to trust the organization they're supporting. That's all this is about. Harry's face was reddening now, anger building like a storm. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His microphone pack pulled against the wire, creating a harsh static sound through the speakers that made people wince. This is exactly what I'm talking about, he snapped, his voice rising. This is exactly the problem. You're trying to trap me. You're trying to twist my words. You're trying to make me look bad on television. This whole thing was a setup from the beginning. I should have known better than to trust any of you. Sam raised his hands in a peaceful gesture, still seated, still calm, still the picture of professionalism. His voice dropped lower, softer, the way you might speak to someone who was genuinely distressed. Nobody's trying to trap you. Please sit down. Let's take a breath and have a real conversation. We can take this in any direction you want. If you don't want to talk about funding right now, that's fine. We can talk about the veterans themselves. We can talk about their stories. We can talk about why this cause matters to you. A conversation? Harry's voice was rising now, getting louder with each word, loud enough that the studio audience was beginning to murmur among themselves. Some people were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Others were pulling out their phones. You don't want a conversation. You know what you want? You want a performance. You want me to dance like a trained monkey so you can get your ratings. I mean, you want me to smile and nod and answer your loaded questions so you can feel like you've accomplished something. Sam's face showed genuine concern now, but not for himself. His concern was for Harry, for what was happening to this man in real time. I think maybe we should take a break, he suggested softly, his hands still raised in that peaceful gesture. Would you like some water? We can step away, regroup, and start fresh. There's no pressure here. But Harry was past the point of no return. His face was flushed, his hands were shaking slightly, and there was a wildness in his eyes that suggested he was no longer thinking clearly. I don't need your water, he shot back, his voice dripping with contempt. I don't need your fake concern. What I need is for people like you to show some basic respect, some basic human decency. Do you have any idea what it's like to live under constant scrutiny? To have every word you say twisted and manipulated? To wake up every morning not knowing what lies have been written about you overnight? The audience was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was watching this car crash unfold in real time, unable to look away even though they desperately wanted to. Sam remained in his seat, his body language open and non-threatening. His hands were still visible, still in that peaceful position. His face showed nothing but compassion and patience. "I can't imagine what that's like," he said honestly, his voice full of sincerity. "I really can't. And I'm not going to pretend that I understand the unique pressures you face. But I promise you, that's not what's happening here. I have nothing but respect for you and your work. I invited you here because I believe in what you're trying to do. I want to help you share that message." Harry pointed a finger directly at Sam, jabbing it in the air for emphasis. His voice was shaking now, whether from anger or emotion or both. "Respect? You're interrogating me on live television. You're making me justify my own charity work to millions of people. You're treating me like a criminal who needs to prove his innocence. How is that respect? How is any of this respect?" Sam took a deliberate breath, clearly choosing his words with extreme care. When he spoke, every word was measured and thoughtful. Asking questions isn't interrogation. It's journalism. It's conversation. It's how we learn about things. And when someone starts a charitable organization and asks the public to support it, questions are part of the process. That's true for everyone, regardless of their title or background. It's not personal. It's just how these things work. That was the moment everything exploded into complete chaos. Harry's face flushed an even deeper shade of red. His whole body was tense, coiled like a spring about to snap. When he spoke, his voice was shaking with barely controlled rage. "My title," he said, the words coming out harsh and bitter. "You think this is about my title? You think I'm upset because you're not bowing and scraping? Is that what you think?" "My title," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You think this is about my title? Let me tell you something, Sam. I gave up everything for a normal life. I walked away from the institution, from the money, from the protection, all of it. And people like you still won't leave me alone." Sam's voice remained steady, almost gentle. "I understand this is emotional for you, but I'm not your enemy. I'm just doing my job." "Your job," Harry spat. "Your job is to tear people down. Your job is to humiliate and expose and profit from other people's pain. Well, I'm done. I'm done with all of it." He reached down and ripped off his microphone, the sound making a sharp pop through the speakers. A producer rushed onto the set, trying to calm things down, but Harry waved him away. Sam finally stood up, his hands still raised in that same peaceful gesture. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Sam said quietly. "That was never my intention." Harry turned to face him directly, and what he said next would become the most quoted moment of the entire disaster. "You're not sorry. None of you are sorry. You're all vultures, circling and waiting for someone to fall so you can pick at the bones. Well, you can have your show. You can have your questions, but you can't have me." Sam tried one more time. "Please, let's just talk about this. Off camera, if you'd prefer." But Harry was already walking toward the exit, his security detail scrambling to follow. "There's nothing to talk about," he called back over his shoulder. "You got what you wanted. You got your drama. Congratulations." The studio sat in stunned silence. Sam Champion stood there, his face a mixture of sadness and confusion. He looked directly into the camera, and when he spoke, his voice was full of genuine regret. "We're going to take a quick break," he said softly. "When we come back, we'll have the weather." As they cut to commercial, you could see Sam's shoulders sag slightly. He had done everything right. He had been patient, kind, professional, and respectful. He had asked legitimate questions in the gentlest possible way, and still, it had fallen apart. In the moments before the cameras cut away completely, Sam turned to one of the producers standing nearby. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The producer shook her head, looking just as bewildered as everyone else. What made the whole situation even more painful was the contrast between the two men. Sam Champion had spent decades building a reputation as one of the kindest, most genuine people in television. He was the guy who remembered crew members' birthdays. He was the one who stayed late to help new staff feel welcome. He never let fame change who he was at his core. And here he was, being accused of being a vulture, of trying to humiliate and trap someone, when all he had done was ask where charity money was going. It was the kind of question that should have had a simple, straightforward answer. Harry, on the other hand, had walked into that studio with walls already up. Maybe it was years of bad experiences with the press. Maybe it was the stress of trying to build a new life. But whatever the reason, he had come in defensive and had taken every question as an attack, even when none was intended. The kicker was the charity question itself. It wasn't personal. It wasn't invasive. It wasn't about his family, or his private life, or any of the things he had legitimate reasons to protect. It was about an organization he had voluntarily put into the public sphere, an organization that was actively seeking public support and donations. When you ask people for money, even for the best cause in the world, they have the right to know how that money will be used. That's not an attack. That's common sense. That's basic accountability. And Sam had asked about it in the kindest, most respectful way possible. But Harry hadn't heard a kind question. He had heard an attack. He had heard doubt and suspicion and malice, none of which were actually there. He had projected all of his past hurts and frustrations onto a man who had nothing to do with any of them. The audience members who were there that day would later describe the atmosphere as surreal. One woman said it felt like watching someone have a breakdown in slow motion. A man in the front row said he kept waiting for Harry to laugh and say it was all a joke, but the laugh never came. Sam's co-hosts, watching from the wings, were horrified. They knew Sam. They knew his character. They knew this wasn't his fault. But they also knew that once something like this happens on live television, the truth doesn't always matter. The clip would be everywhere within minutes, and people would form their opinions based on a snippet without context. And that's exactly what happened. But before we get to the aftermath, let's go back to those final moments on set. Because there's one more exchange that's crucial to understanding just how badly this went wrong. As Harry was walking away, Sam called out to him one last time. "I hope you'll reconsider," he said. "The offer stands to continue this conversation anytime you'd like." Harry stopped, turned around, and delivered his final blow. "Continue the conversation?" he said incredulously. "Sam, there is no conversation. There's you asking gotcha questions and me refusing to play along. That's not a conversation. That's an ambush." Sam's face fell. You could see it hurt him, being characterized that way. "It's not an ambush to ask how a charity operates," he said quietly. "It's just not." "To you, maybe," Harry replied. "But you're not the one who's been chased by photographers. You're not the one who's had lies written about you every single day. You're not the one who's watched the media destroy people you love. So forgive me if I don't trust your good intentions." And with that, he was gone. Really gone. Out of the studio, into a car, and away from Good Morning America forever. Sam stood there for a long moment, processing what had just happened. When the cameras finally stopped rolling completely, he sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. "I don't understand," he said to anyone who was listening. "What did I do?" The truth was, he hadn't done anything wrong. He had treated Harry with respect and professionalism. He had asked appropriate questions. He had remained calm and kind, even when Harry became aggressive and accusatory. He had tried multiple times to de-escalate the situation. He had offered water, a break, a chance to talk off camera. He had done everything a good host should do. But sometimes, doing everything right still isn't enough. Sometimes, people come into a situation so wounded, so defensive, so ready for a fight, that nothing you say or do will make a difference. They're going to see enemies everywhere, even when there aren't any. That's what happened in that studio. Harry had decided before he even sat down that he couldn't trust the media. And once someone makes that decision, once they put up that wall, it doesn't matter how gentle you are or how reasonable your questions are. Everything becomes proof of their suspicions. The sad part is that Harry's charity work was genuinely important. Veterans' mental health is a cause that deserves attention and support. If he had just answered Sam's simple question, if he had explained where the money goes and how the organization operates, he could have inspired thousands of people to donate. He could have turned that interview into a powerful tool for good. Instead, he turned it into a spectacle. He made it about himself, about his grievances, about his pain. And in doing so, he completely overshadowed the very cause he claimed to care so much about. Sam Champion didn't deserve to be called a vulture. He didn't deserve to be accused of running an ambush. He didn't deserve to have his integrity questioned on live television. He was doing his job, and he was doing it well. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been clearer. On one side, you had Sam, calm and professional, trying to have a productive conversation. On the other side, you had Harry, defensive and aggressive, and seeing attacks where none existed. One man kept his composure under pressure. The other lost it completely. One man tried to build bridges. The other burned them down. One man cared about serving his audience with good information. The other cared only about his own feelings. In the end, Harry's outburst said far more about him than it did about Sam Champion or Good Morning America. It revealed someone who, despite all his talk about wanting privacy and normalcy, was still seeking the spotlight. Someone who, despite all his criticism of the media, was perfectly willing to use that same media when it suited him. And when the media asked him a basic question that any charitable organization should be prepared to answer, he couldn't handle it. He lashed out. He made accusations. He played the victim. And then he stormed off, leaving Sam Champion standing there, guilty of nothing, except trying to do his job with kindness and professionalism. The whole thing lasted less than 10 minutes from start to finish. 10 minutes that showed the difference between someone who understands that public life comes with public questions and someone who wants the benefits of fame without any of the responsibilities. Sam Champion proved why he's beloved by millions of viewers. He showed grace under fire. He showed restraint when many people would have fought back. He showed more class in those 10 minutes than some people show in a lifetime. Harry, unfortunately, proved something very different. He proved that titles and privilege don't automatically come with maturity or self-awareness. He proved that you can give up a royal role, but still act entitled. He proved that sometimes the people who complain the loudest about being victimized are the ones who are quickest to attack others. The question Sam asked was simple. Where does the charity money go? That's it. That's all he wanted to know. It's a question that should have taken 30 seconds to answer. Instead, it triggered a meltdown that will be remembered for years. And through it all, Sam Champion remained the good guy. The professional. The one who kept his cool. The one who tried to make peace. The one who genuinely cared about having a meaningful conversation. That's what happens when entitlement meets accountability. When someone who's used to deference encounters someone who treats them like everyone else. When privilege runs headfirst into basic journalism. Sam Champion asked a fair question. Harry couldn't handle it. And in those 33 seconds, everyone watching learned exactly who these two men really are.